Okay, kids, you want to come on up? We'll have a penny march. Yeah, Jude's making his move. Ready? Where's your shoes at, Jude? He's down there. He's right. You used to keep ignoring us. That's he goes back. Well, welcome everybody. It's good to see you here this morning. We had any birthdays or anniversaries this past week?
Did I have a birthday?
You had a birthday. And Jude had a birthday, and somebody else had one. I think it's probably a week or two ago. Well, who's this? Elisa, lead us in happy birthday. Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God. Happy birthday to you. We wish you many more. We wish you many more. God bless you and more. We wish you many more. Happy birthday, y'all. Announcements. What we got coming up? Anything?
We have a change for the ladies' aid meeting. We're going to have it that Thursday instead of the Tuesday. So I think it's the 7th.
September the 7th, Ladies' Aid.
Ladies' Aid.
Where's
It's
that?
going to be at my house, and everybody's invited. Me and Susan.
Okay. Well, that'll be nice.
Yes, the men can go downstairs and.
What time are we supposed to be there?
6:30. 6:30.
6:30.
They will come at 6 or 9.
Okay. All right. Well, good.
And we'll get our address and a map or directions.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, good. Very good. Thank you. We appreciate the invite. Anything else that needs to be announced? How about prayer requests before we come to our altar? I got a prayer request? Okay. David's granddaughter is having, I think Kevin said a C-section.
A C-section.
About right now, I guess. So y'all be praying for 11:30 maybe. But pray for her and the family. Anything else?
I have a special unspoken request.
Okay. The other unspoken request. The Salt County will, let's gather around our audience more. Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for the people that's made up this way. Remember each and every question and Lord, that's right in all these days.
That perfect body will remain with you and stay close to us. We are to gently all for everything you do. Pray God for the ones that are sick, the ones that are here through. Lord, for David's granddaughter, when she's going through C-section, Lord, pray God for land pollution, for blood pressure issues. We pray that you just bring those down. And Lord, thank you, God, for that you are still answering prayers. And Lord, we see that each and every single day. Lord, we thank you, God, for your power, your grace, and foremost of all, for your mercy, Lord, and the love, Lord, you showed us, Lord, when we didn't deserve it. Lord, be with us throughout the remainder of the service. Each one that takes a part, we pray that you bless in a mighty way. Help us, Lord, feel your spirit. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Where's Jude? Jude, would you like to take up our offering this morning?
Yes.
I'll let your daddy bless it.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, again, thank you for this opportunity, Father, Lord. We just ask that you would just bless us all, and for those that are kingdom, Father, Lord, bless those that have and those who do not, Father, Lord, most of all, thank you for salvation. Bless this service through Brother Lord, who stands and preaches the word, Father, Lord. Help us, lead God, direct each one. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, I'll hand it over to Debbie.
We'll do our choir.
I've seen her. Yeah, she's busy. Did somebody else have that?
That was the thing. I thought that was my fault.
No, I haven't.
Oh, anyway.
324 in the blue book.
Oh.
324 in the blue book. Jesus said, I'm wanting to go away, but I'll see you another opportunity. God is today. So they carry like the roots of a more tower from on high. As they hear it, that they receive within my heart above. I can feel it, Holy Spirit, I'm dwelling deep within. But sometimes it feels so gentle, and sometimes my body rushes through. But that's in spirit, that when Jesus Once again, I say that this morning, and I've battled you all day long. But in my weakness, I'm simply your son. And that's not good, my Savior is wrong. And the sun's coming up in the morning. Every tear will be gone from my eyes. It's so plain, gonna give way to glory. And like an eagle, I'll take to the sky. In a world filled with doubt and confusion, it's so hard when you don't understand. Oh, but I'll stand on a solid foundation, and I'll hold to an unchanging hand. And the sun's coming up in the morning. Every tear will be gone from my eyes. It's so great to wanna give way to glory. And like an eagle, I'll take to the sky. Praise the Lord. Page 230. I'm in all these 2 verse songs. Sometimes I think it's 2 verses.
Yes, B flat.
This house that I live in, I know will be great. These walls will grow weaker with time, but I don't need to worry. I'm here on earth, for my real home is
few weeks ago, but we're doing it again for some reason.
This is when C.
See.
Page 76.
Glory,
You know, one of these days the preaching's going to stop, but the singing's going to keep going. And I don't care if you can carry a tune down here or not. You're going to be singing over there. And you're going to be in perfect tune. What a day that's going to be. I was playing that one earlier, I think. But yeah, it's going to be a wonderful day. Good to see everybody out this morning. Glad to be able to talk about some stuff every now and then, and not worry about it being online. You know, but no, God's been so good to us over the last lifetime. But you know, it's amazing to watch Him work. And you know, I listened to a message last Sunday about I stand amazed, I think was the title of his message. But you know, and every day that I look and I see how God's worked in our lives, I stand amazed at everything that He does. I really do. It's just we shouldn't be amazed that God does what He says He'll do. That He'd never leave us, He'd never forsake us, that every time we need Him, He's always there. We shouldn't stand amazed at that. We should just, I don't want to say we should expect it, because we don't deserve it. But I think, and I think we ought to appreciate it, but it shouldn't surprise us when God does what He says He'll do, because He's never made a promise that He never intended to keep, and that He never has kept. He's always kept His promises. Does anybody have a song today before we get started? I'm glad to see nothing's changed. It's all still the same. Anybody? All right. Well, we're going to go to the book of 1 Samuel, and we're going to hear a story that y'all probably never heard before. I'll go ahead and get this thing on. It's about this little boy that faces a giant. I know y'all never heard that story before, right? But God gave me this message, and I think it's very appropriate for the time that we're going through right now for all of us. But and we've talked about this, we've been through it, and over and over again. But you know, God gave me a little different slant on this, and I wanted to share it with you today. And again, it just goes along with the thought that I'm still amazed, but I really am looking back over the last 3 or 4 weeks. You know how God has really moved, and you know, and how, and we'll see as we get into the message here. But it says, and as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, and by the way, that's David that he's talking about. Well, let me just go ahead and read the verse 22. It says, and David left his carriage in the hands of the keeper of the carriage and ran into the army and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with him, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel he is come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, what shall be done to this man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And so, I just kind of wanted to get started on that story, but I want to just paint a picture here of what's going on. And then I want to share the thought that God's given me here. David came to visit his brethren. Now, for 40 days, Goliath has been coming to issue the challenge. We've been over this and we've studied this here not too long ago, I think it's been. But Goliath had issued this challenge for 40 days. And to be quite honest with you, I think before I came to this church, I thought he had just come and issued the challenge and David heard it. I don't think I ever read and actually understood the fact that he had issued this challenge for 40 days. And David here, he says, who is this Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? You know, David was, the first time he heard that message, he was ready to fight.
And now there were others that had heard this message for 40 days. The entire army had heard this message for 40 days. And let me tell you some of the conversations that probably went on within that army. I guarantee you they were sitting there at night. I'll tell you what, if he comes out there tomorrow, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fight him. I'm going to go ahead and take that challenge. I think I can do it. And you know what? The next day came, they heard the challenge, they ran in fear. David heard the challenge, and what did he do? He went to Saul and he says, you know what? I'll do it. He took that step. And as I look and I see the things that God has done over the past few weeks, and I'm going to share a few things that I haven't shared, I don't think at least publicly yet. Maybe I've shared them with individuals, and maybe most of you, to be quite honest. But I told somebody last week that after we were willing to take that first step, it felt like God that works at Staples, to be quite honest with you, because it was like pressing the easy button. It seems like everything is just falling into place once we were able to take the first step. Now, going back to this story, David here, he says, you know what? I'm going to go fight this giant. Well, what did Saul do? Saul gave him his armor. He gave him his sword. He gave him everything he needed to go fight this giant. But what did David say? David said, you know what? I don't need this stuff because I'm going to fight in the name of God, and God's going to take care of me. I believe he had faith to step out and to take that first step toward the battlefield, and God went right there with him. And all he had to do once he got out there was sling one stone, and the giant fell. And he took his own sword, the sword that the giant carried, and cut his head off. He killed the giant with one little stone. And I want you to think about that. How easy it was when David went to the battlefield. And the thing is that is hard for us today is to be willing to go out to the battlefield. The thing that is difficult is to take that first step. There's an old Chinese proverb that was probably written by somebody doing fortune cookies in Kentucky, no doubt, that says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And that's really the truth here. I believe a lot of times that we're just completely unwilling to take that first step for God. Now, like I said, it seems like when Barbie was, we talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, and we've talked ourselves out of it so many times for a lot of different reasons. I guess it just wasn't God's time. But what happened was when she first submitted her resume, in 24 hours she had a job. In less than 2 weeks I had a job. You see how God worked it all out. We're still trying to find a place to live, but I believe that it's going to work out the way that God, because I believe God's in it. I believe there's so many things that God's already done that I have no doubts that He's going to work the rest of it out. David had no doubts when he walked out to the battlefield that God was going to take care of this battle for him. The children of Israel, when they faced 3 enemies coming at them at once, they went out to the battlefield celebrating. That's in the book of 2 Chronicles. I think it's around chapter number 20 if you want to look it up. But it's about when Jehoshaphat was king. But there was a time they went out to the battlefield to face these enemies, and what happened is when they got out to the battlefield, they realized that God had already taken care and won the battle for them. They didn't even have to lift a finger, but they had to be willing to go to the battlefield. You see, David did good here. What happened later? What happened later was he was sitting at home when he should have been out on the battlefield, and that's when he fell out of the good graces of God. When he and Bathsheba committed that act. And then ended up having a child because of it. And what happened? Because of what he had done and because of the murder that he had committed against Uriah later, he said, God took that child from him because of the things that he had done. But because he was too lazy to get out to the battlefield, that's when he failed. We've got to be willing to go to the battlefield. We talked about that during Sunday school this morning. I think a lot of times we expect God to just bring them in here. God, yes, we'll take care of them if you'll just bring them in. Well, if we don't invite them in, they're not coming. I'm telling you, if we're not willing to step out for God when we're out there on the battlefield, it's never going to come. But that first step is always the hardest. Do you remember when you got saved? Do you remember that day? What was it like? And I remember I've heard Kevin testify of his. I guarantee he was grabbing hold of that seat just as tight as he could. And there's a lot of people that grab hold of that as tight as they can to that seat, and then they end up, and the service is over, and they walk out, and I got away with it that time. You know, and the problem is, just like Billy Greg talked about, the problem is you might not have that next time. Now, you know, there was a man that did that, walked out 23 years later, was the next time that God called him. And he was miserable over the course of that 28 to 23 years. He said he grabbed hold of that seat that night and he hung on. But what you find is, in every story that I've ever heard, now I tell you, to be quite honest, I was only 2 steps away from the altar when I came, because I was sitting on the front row. But those people that are sitting on the back row, they'll tell you, when they took the first step, they don't remember it until they got up from the altar. And that's the truth today. Why? Because God makes it easy once you're willing to take the first step. You look at Peter. Peter had to be able to take the first step out of the boat, right? Jesus said, come. Peter said, if it's you, Lord, bid me to come to you. Storms raging, waves flying around all around him. The waves are way over his head. And Jesus said, come, and Peter stepped out of the boat. And the problem is sometimes, and it was easy for him. Why? Because he stepped out and he stood on that water. Now, he took his eyes off Jesus. Yes, he started to sink. But he was willing to step out of that boat. We have to be willing to take that step and get out of the comfort zone that we're in. We get comfortable. And you know, comfortable is not always a good place to be. Comfortable is not. You have to take chances. There are too many people in this life today that live by the phrase, I'm going to do this one day. And you know, a lot of times when people actually do what it is they say they're going to do, they're surprised. You know, I said I was going to Virginia Tech. And I'll be honest with you, most of my family, and probably my mom included, counted on the fact that I couldn't stay away from home that long. and we're just praying that I'd be, they said, he'll be back in 2 weeks. That's what they said. All my family, pretty much all our family said that he'll be back in 2 weeks. He's never stayed away from home. He'll not be able to stand it. 4 years later, I graduated. And then moved farther away. Now God gave me a blessing to be able to come back home, and now He's moving me farther away again. You know, but if that's what He wants, that's what I want to do. And you know, I believe with all my heart that it is, because when we take that first step, when we took that first step, we saw Him working, but we had to take the first step. And you know, that's all it takes sometimes, is take that first leap of faith. You've heard the leap of faith. Now, that's not in the Bible. I don't think there's anywhere in there that says leap of faith. I don't think you'll find that phrase in there. But to have faith in knowing that if you do what God says to do, that not only will He take care of you, not only will He prepare the way, but He'll take care of all those that you might have to leave behind. You know, to know that God is in control is the greatest thing. Now, what happened when David was willing to step out on faith? When David was willing to say, you know what? I'm not going to let this giant have his way. I'm going to step out. I'm going to take that first step to the battlefield. And he got laughed at. He got made fun of. And the giant said, well, fine, if you're willing to be stupid, I'm going to go ahead and kill you anyway. He says, well, you come to me with a sword, but I come to you in the name of the Lord. And he let it go. And the giant probably said, what in the world's he doing? They hit him in the perfect spot. Why? Because it was not guided by David's accuracy. It was guided by the hand of the Lord. Not because David was the perfect marksman, but because God was with him and David knew who it was going to be. All David had to do was take that first step. Any one of those people in that army, I guarantee you they were sitting there, I'm going to do it tomorrow. He comes back. There's so many people that say, I'm going to do this tomorrow. Poor old Alex been on salad and water for the last 2 weeks. Or at least he's going to do it tomorrow. That's what he says. But we do this. I'm going to start my diet tomorrow. I'm going to make a New Year's resolution. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to do this tomorrow. And then what you find out is so many tomorrows pass that you never actually do what it is that God wants you to do because you were never willing to take that first step of faith. What does the Bible say? Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Linda said she's having blood pressure issues. I had those one time. I'll guarantee you my blood pressure was sky high when I was being called to preach. Kevin, you know what this is like. When you're being called to preach or when God's calling you to do any job, you get nervous. You get scared. You get worried. And you're like, I'm not able to do this. And you are absolutely right. You're not able to do this. But with God's help, you will. And what you will find is if you're willing to take that first step, that first leap of faith, that first motion toward what it is that God's wanting you to do instead of running away, you'll find that He's right there, already prepared the way, and He's already waiting on you. Olivia likes to watch the Lion Guard. You know the Lion Guard? Okay, I see shaking heads. People watch this. Okay, y'all don't have kids. Shame on you. No, I'm just kidding. I watch them too when she's not there. So don't judge me. All right. But there was an episode where they talk about the hippo lanes. You know, the swamp comes up. It's the rainy season. The swamp comes up. The weeds grow so tall that you can't get from one side of the place to the other. And the hippos are the big, strong people that are going out and making the lanes to get across to the other side. And so that the rest of the animals will have the ability to get across there. Well, what you'll find is a lot of times you might see that there's a few weeds to stop you. And you know, it's like I preached one time about the devil's scarecrow. He'll throw that scarecrow up to get you, stop you. What's he trying to stop you from? From taking that first step and realizing God's already prepared the way if you'll just get through that initial barrier. Sometimes it's just a little barrier that's keeping us from the blessings that God has in store for us. All we have to do is take that first step. You look at Moses. What if he had decided not to take that first step to go back to Egypt? He says, God, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I've got a family. I need to take care of them. I don't want to go back, and I don't want to be that deliverer. You know, they may still be in Egypt today. But he was willing to take that step. He says, God, I can't do it. He says, I've got a speech impediment. But yet he stood before Pharaoh, and the Bible says that what did he do? He said, it says Moses said unto Pharaoh. Once he was willing to take that first step, he found out it was pretty easy. Now, did it all go the way he planned? No, but it went all the way God planned. And God brought them out. Once he took that first step of faith. Abraham's first step of faith was simple. All he had to do was get away from his father's kindred and go to a place where he knew not. Now, was it simple? Yes. Was it hard? Absolutely. I'd say he was comfortable in his father's house. He didn't want to leave home. But you know what happened? He had to do it. When he did, look at what God's done through the years through Abraham's obedience. It's that first leap of faith. The people, if I'm remembering the story right, the children of Israel, when they were crossing the Red Sea to go into the Promised Land, the priests had to step 1 foot in the water. And when they stepped 1 foot in the water stopped. You know? But they had to step 1 foot in the water. And you can't get to the 7th dip if you think of Naaman. You can't get to the 7th dip if you're not willing to dip the first time. And we've got to take that first step. And that's always the hardest. To trust God enough to take that first step. And if we do that, you're going to see God working. You know, it's amazing to me every time. And I said we shouldn't be amazed, but God is amazing. From our perspective, God is amazing because He does things that we can't do. And He prepares ways that we are unable to do once we get there, but He has already made a way. And you know, He did it all. You know, the best example is in the Garden of Gethsemane. When Jesus said, you know, let this cup pass from me. What did He say? Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And you know what He did when He left that garden? He turned around and He took the first step toward the cross. When He said, not my will, but thine be done. When I gave in to my call and I looked over at Barbie and I said, I'm not getting out of this. We need to learn that song. And she knew what song I was talking about I never thought that I would sing and I would preach. She knew exactly what song. When I looked over and I gave in to that call, it wasn't hard to make the announcement. When Kevin finally told somebody that wasn't his wife, you know, he told me. Kevin has never preached like a first-time preacher. He never has. I believe God's made it, I won't say easy for you, but he's been there with you every step of the way, and he will continue to do that. Nothing's easy, but God always is there with us, and it seems easy because he is. It only seems hard when we get away from it. If it gets hard for us, hit your knees and talk to him, because that means we've left it. That's when it gets hard. That's what I've got. Y'all come on. Take the first step. That's all you got to do. And he will go with us every step of the way. Don't grab hold of the pew. Christians grab hold of the pew just as much as the lost people do. And they say, I can't do it. I can't go talk to that person. They'll get mad at me. I can't go win that person to the Lord. He's never going to be saved. I'm telling you, if he's telling you to go, go. Take the first step, and you'll find it's a whole lot easier. There have been messages I never wanted to preach, but when I got up and preached, those are the ones that people said, that's one of the best messages I've ever preached. You know why? Because I was willing to take the first step. It's always hard. Let's all stand.
Page 153. I've wandered far away from God. Now I'm coming home. The paths of sin too long I've trod. Lord, I'm coming home. Coming home. Coming home. Never more to roam. Open wide thine arms of love. Lord, I'm coming home. I wasted many precious years. Now I'm coming home. I now repent with bitter tears. Lord, I'm coming home. Coming home. Never more to roam. Open wide.
You know, if it's worth doing tomorrow, it's worth doing today. Don't be afraid to step out for God. Been a good place to be. Anybody have anything at all? Everybody come back tonight at 6 o'clock. Wednesday night at 7. And anything else? All right. Brother Randall, you dismissed.
Heavenly Father God, Lord, thank you for this time to be in your house today, Lord. We thank you for this message that we just received, Lord, from the messenger, Lord. Lord, Lord, we pray that you be with each and every one of us, Lord. We are separate ways now. Keep us safe until this is one time we can make it back to your house to worship you once again, Lord. In the name of Jesus, we see things. Amen.